Again, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. In this week's Torah portion, we see the Torah engage in a broad discussion about freedom on a spatial and on a temporal level. It talks about how Passover is to be observed in the land of Egypt as the Israelites are preparing for the Exodus. But it then moves to talk about how Passover is to be observed and the rites that are to remind us about Passover in the land of Israel. However, not only talks about Passover on that spatial level, but temporally as well. It has a very broad vision. It talks about how Passover is to be observed at that moment, and also how Passover is to be observed by all future generations. So, in the main, this is a Torah portion that deals with freedom on a very broad level. However, lurking within all the details of the Parsha, as it describes the last 3 plagues and the preparation for the night that the Israelites leave, and the observances that they're to take with them into the land, lurking within all of those details are also details that allow us to understand freedom not just on a broad level, but on a deep level as well. And we but need to dig beneath the surface to find what the Torah is talking about. But in order to dig, you need a shovel. And this week, we have a shovel provided to us, not in the Parsha itself, but later on in the book of Deuteronomy. So I invite you, if you will, to open up your Chumashim, your Bibles, to page 1079. We'll be opening up to Parshat Re'eh in the book of Deuteronomy, the 5th book of the Bible. And in the Parsha, it describes some of the rules and regulations that are to guide an Israelite when they own a slave. Now, slavery in those day and ages was an institution where Israelites would sell themselves to other Israelites when they were in dire financial circumstances. The slavery was not imposed, but it was one of choice that a person took on. And in the Torah portion, Parshat Re'eh, on page 1079, it says, "If a fellow Hebrew, a man or woman, is sold to you, he shall serve you for 6 years. And in the 7th year, you shall set him free." And here is the key point that will allow us to understand a crucial element of this week's Torah portion. It says, "When you set this slave free, do not let him go empty-handed. Furnish him out of the flock, the threshing floor, and vat with which the Lord your God has blessed you." So when the slave goes free, you're to give him what? You're to give him gifts. He is not to leave empty-handed. Now, in giving him these gifts, we're not paying him or her the wages for the 6 years of servitude. The Torah is fairly clear about that. On the contrary, the Torah is explicit. You furnish him with these gifts. My question to you now is, why? Why furnish this person with these gifts? What do you think? How would you answer that question? I'm sorry? Right, so one reason could be that if he sold himself into slavery because of financial need, you give him these gifts in order to give him a start. Excellent answer. Other thoughts? Okay, another way could be just to thank the person. Excellent, yeah. Dignity, seeing to that person's dignity. They've been a slave for so long, this provides them with a little dignity. Yes? Right, so in other words, to help provide them so they don't fall back. Right. So it could be to provide for their dignity, to thank them, to help them get a start. All excellent answers. All excellent answers. There is, however, one more answer that's provided by Rabbi Joseph Hertz, former chief rabbi of Great Britain, and the author of the Hertz commentary that used to be used throughout the country. And in that commentary, he notes and cites a number of the different things that were said as to why we send off a slave with gifts. But he goes further, and he also notes that it is impossible, under any circumstance, for a person enduring any kind of servitude to not feel pain, to not at some point in time harbor feelings of resentment, of anger, of hurt, and even, depending on the nature of the slavery, hate. And therefore, we give gifts as a way of challenging those feelings, as a way of trying to help set those feelings aside, so that when the person goes free on a physical level, they also do not have to be enslaved by those powerful negative emotions and held to them. We give the gifts not only for all of these reasons, but in addition, so that they can be free from their pain, from their hurt, from their anger, from their hate. Because it's not just physical liberation, but also emotional liberation that the Torah concerns itself with. Understanding this law and seeing it so clearly here in Deuteronomy allows us, as I said, to dig beneath the surface of this week's Torah portion and see the depth to which this parsha speaks about freedom. For it not only talks about freedom in terms of different places that the Israelites will observe Passover, and it not only talks about freedom in terms of different times that the Israelites will observe Passover, but the parsha goes deeper than that. In chapter 11, verses 1 through 3, the parsha relates how God commands Moses to tell the Israelites that they are to ask their Egyptian neighbors for gifts of gold and silver. And it says that God will dispose the Israelites or the Egyptians favorably towards the Israelites, and the Egyptians will give them these gifts. This goes back to Genesis chapter 15, when God first talks to Abraham about making a covenant and first says, your descendants will serve hundreds of years in servitude, but they will go up from Egypt with great wealth. It reflects also on the conversation that God first has with Moses in chapter 3 of the book of Exodus, when revealing God's self at the bush that was not consumed. God says just this, and the Israelites will ask of the Egyptians, and the Egyptians will give to them, and they will go forward with great wealth. This is not a minor detail. This was viewed from the very beginning in the eyes of the Torah as essential. We see it in chapter 11, and we see the fulfillment of it in chapter 12. And we ask ourselves, why? Why would the Torah focus on this detail? Why make it so important? Now we know the answer. Because enslaved as they were, beaten as they were, killed as they were, it would be understandable for the Israelites to harbor hatred towards the Egyptians for all the pain and suffering that they brought upon them. It would be understandable for the Israelites to hold on to a tremendous burning anger towards the Egyptians. But the Torah understands that if a people hates, a people are not free. Because those emotions are so strong, they control us. They become gods, if you will, that give us directions as to what to do. They shape our actions and our thinking, which is why in the Talmud, in the Tractate of Shabbat, it even identifies anger and hate as avodah zarah, as idol worship. And so, this detail, the Egyptians giving to the Israelites, is not a matter of reparations, because honestly, what could possibly make up for hundreds of years of enslavement, for beatings, for torture, for killing? A few gifts? I doubt it. This is not about back pay. This has nothing to do with the past, but everything to do with the Israelites and their future. so that they can go forward and be free, both physically and emotionally. And this particular practice can also speak to us. It also guides us in our lives as to how we can be free as well. We experience the physical freedom, the political freedom, the social freedoms. In this country, we're greatly blessed. But emotionally, we stand, so many of us, in jail. We are imprisoned to the powerful emotions of anger and hate and pain. How do we get free from these? The Torah's suggestion, you need to begin looking at the gifts. Now, when someone wrongs us, we can confront them. We can ask them, like the Israelites did, for something back. We might get an apology. We might even have a gesture made, not to take away the hurt, because nothing can, but to at least change the emotional dynamic. But what happens if the person who angers us and hurts us, who engenders our hate, what happens if they don't apologize? What happens if they make no gesture? How do we deal with it then? I offer this one suggestion. No real relationship is built around just one moment and is one-dimensional. A real relationship has multiple experiences and multiple dimensions to it. And we can focus on the thing that the person did that angered us, and we can hold on to that. Or we can conjure up in our own mind the gifts that that relationship gave us as well, the benefits that we took from it, the things that helped us in that relationship, and thereby introduce into our own emotional psyche a positive perspective to help overcome all the negative feelings that can be engendered by such strong emotions. Consider the gifts of that relationship and follow the Torah's prescription, and we begin walking down the path to set ourselves free. So often in my counseling, in my pastoral work, I meet with a person who is cut off from their family or has cut someone out of their lives because of that thing that they did. And they will go into great depth about that thing that that person did, as if that was the only thing that that person did. But only focusing on that one moment and not seeing the other elements of the relationship, they are enslaved. Now, by thinking about the other things that one gains from a relationship, I'm not saying we should forgive all things done. This has nothing to do about the other person in this particular sermon. I suggest this for your benefit, for my benefit. I suggest it so that we learn how to liberate ourselves. Another chief rabbi of Great Britain, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, notes that there is a difference between living with history and living in history. And here I want to just take a moment and expand on his insight. Living in history allows the anger and pain, the hurt and the hate of the past to control us. But living with history allows us to learn and grow from our past. Living in the past lets the past hold us and control us. But living with the past enables us to hold the past, to not ignore our pain, to not just forget our anger and our hurt, but to be able to hold it while not letting it hold us, is the way that we walk the path to freedom in our own lives as well. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.